Good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon for me. I'm based out of Toronto. My name is Ahmed Otmani Amawi. I lead the small and medium businesses and what we call growth accounts segment for Microsoft for Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. Non-for-profit is the really industry that is near and dear to Microsoft because it's what's fueling all our societies, and we have a lot of good programs in Microsoft that we're going to share with you. But today, I wanted to share with you some of the, I would say, insight that we've seen as Microsoft for the non-for-profit industry, but also sharing with you some of the disruption that we have seen year to date. Because after the 2020 pandemic, disruption is the new normal. Like the disruption are reshaping businesses, requiring businesses to move at an even faster, I would say, speed. So what we have established is that the only constant is change. What began as an acceleration in conversion technology has become accelerated in conversion markets. The business models need to change. As we've seen in the pandemic, a lot of companies are saying, hey, we're going to do our digital transformation. We have a roadmap for 3 years, for 4 years. But what happened is that we had to move to the cloud and be digital within a couple of weeks or months to adapt and unfortunate circumstances of the pandemic. So coupled with this is the fact that the market volatility is turning business as usual into business unusual. And there's simply no steady fast like norm no more. So for small and medium businesses, non-for-profit leaders are really facing labor changes. I would say shorter rising wages growth, multi-generational workforce challenges, along with mindset shifts where people are fundamentally thinking about how, when, and where they work. People want more transparency, accountability, and connection across their businesses. And if a company and a nonprofit fails to adapt, it will be overtaken by more forward-thinking competitors. And when we say competitors and non-for-profit, other organizations that are actually want to also promote their cause. If we could go to the next slide. Thank you very much, my friend. So something that is really important, and this is only related to small and medium businesses, but it's also really relevant because I wanted to share with you some stats. Traditional SMB finance systems are actually don't allow for rapid change. So 20% of the SMBs, and this is a study that we have done, will cease to operate by 2025 because they cannot pivot fast enough to digitize their operation and meet their customer demands. As we are also at the precipice of some unfortunate economical turn downs, customers are looking more about keeping their OPEX, consolidating vendors, and actually doing more with less. And furthermore, 73% of employees want flexible hybrid work post-pandemic. Even 76% of CFOs are dissatisfied with cross-functional collaboration to bridge the gap between operational and financial planning. And I want to share with you some of the non-for-profit sector trends. If you can move to the next slide, my friend. Like this is something that we're actually observing. We're observing four following trends linked to the fundraising as a result of COVID-19. Number one, financial hardship. Number two, the growing funding needs. Number three, the latent funds. Number three, the event limitation. So let's talk number one about the financial hardship. The number of donors, the amount, and the retention has reduced due to COVID-19. And as we go also to some economical turmoil. So retail sales has also declined due to lockdown. Organizations that receive grants on providing services are seeing their funds reduce. Many organizations are struggling to provide services in a time of increased need. So growing funding needs, what does this mean? Demand for services has increased by 31%, while funds have been reduced, making the need of fundraising more urgent than ever. It's not because there's less, but we actually need more to help and non-for-profits to actually achieve more. But The matching gift fundraising, and it's really important because I really want to give actually a practical example in Microsoft. Many non-for-profit have programs with their corporation to match their employee donation, but donors are unaware and do not follow the process of the gift, leaving the non-for-profit significantly short in money. It is estimated, for example, in North America and in the US alone, it's a 10 billion loss for non-for-profit. As Microsoft, we actually have a gift program for the non-for-profit that we actually going to support. Whatever we do, we support. Actually, Microsoft matches that. But until the last years where Microsoft is doing a really big campaign, doing a give month, where they're really making employees aware, a lot of employees were not using it. Events limitation. Lockdowns has shown us that the most frequent fundraising activities, which is events, are not as relevant as more. So many non-for-profits are rethinking on how they reach their donors. So if we can move to the next slide, something that is really the heart of what we do. So what is the response? Number one, you got to know your constituents. Number two, you got to understand your donors. Number three, you got to ease the gift experience. Number four, optimize fundraising and marketing processes. So one thing is clear, the world is changing. Non-for-profit need to rethink how they raise their funds, attract new donors and new constituents. But not only attracting them is necessary in a world where so many needs are needed, and with limited attention span, it is critical to understand your donor, using data to drive that knowledge and empower them to act. It is also critical to ease the giving experience. If you can't reach new constituents, but they will not purchase or donate, you won't be able to provide services to your community. And finally, process fundraising needs to be automated, optimized for the best ROI for the dollar spent. That is very, very relevant. And actually, Microsoft is committed to the non-for-profit. And if we go to the next slide, we actually have Microsoft offers for non-for-profit. If you register as a nonprofit, here's the full plethora of offers. I don't want to drain this slide, but I want to simply provide you with a snapshot of what we're offering. So if you want to enable your day-to-day work, Microsoft 365 Business Premium, as a nonprofit, you get 10 free users. And if you need to buy additional more, you would buy at an additional discounted price of $5.5 per user, which is a significant discount. The non-for-profit is one of the industries we really remove the margin for Microsoft, because it's not about selling, it's actually about helping. Microsoft 365 E3 is only for $9, and 365 E5 is only at $22 per user per month. And these are USD prices. Also, for the Surface devices, you can save up to 10% in your selected device. Number two, how we talked previously about data. You got to know your donors and make your data talk, because it is a gold mine for every non-for-profit. The data that you have, if you can make it talk, you can create more revenue streams, ways to reach your donors, and be more personal. So with that, you can use Power BI, which is the leader BI tool that we have available. Power BI's desktop is available and eligible for non-for-profit, and the Power BI Professional, which gives you even more cloud flows, is only at $3 per user, which is a 70% discount. Finally, if you need to optimize your cloud migration, you get a 3,000 US Azure Services credit per year to complete your portfolio with Azure products. So that's almost a $300 US per month of credit. Finally, Power Apps. When we talk about modernize your processes and manage constituent, Power Apps, which is the low no code application development tool, the most used worldwide, is offered to non-for-profit free 10 users and a discounted price of $2.5 per user per month for additional users. And if you need to actually use Dynamics 365 for sales, which is what we're going to soon see in one of the use cases of one of our customers with Microsoft, where they use that, actually, you get it for a discounted price of almost $24 US. So this is just to show you how Microsoft is committed, and you can actually go on Microsoft non-for-profit website and actually register as a nonprofit and get your grant as easy as it is. So if we can go to the next slide, what I want to say is that this is a slide that I don't want to drain as well, but it's also SMBs, but also for non-for-profit, because traditional non-for-profit accounting systems is actually inhibiting growth and making it difficult to adapt to disruption and rapid change. Number one, they're manual, inefficient, error-prone. They book down employees, not only hindering their operational effectiveness and preventing them from focusing on more strategic work that can help business grow and expand. This often leads to frustrated employees, low profit margin, higher employee turnover, and increased cost. And we have a product that has been really entwined with the non-for-profit industry, which is Microsoft Business Central, because it's a really packaged offer that actually handles and helps non-for-profit across all their operational sales um, departments. So if you can move to the next slide, you can see here that in order to help non-for-profit overcome these challenges and make their vision a reality, Microsoft Business Central is connected business management solution that not only enables you to adapt faster, work smarter, perform better. Connected means you can bring together your finance, sales, services, operation teams with a single, easy to use application to get more insights. This in order to drive business forward and be prepared for what's next. So if we go to the next slide, I want to really share this rapidly because this is we call it the competitive advantage of Microsoft is we're the only vendor that has what we call the One Microsoft Cloud. No other vendor has the breadth of the Microsoft Cloud while continuing to be modular, extensive, so our customers can start with what they need and adapt as they grow. So everything is built on Microsoft Azure, which is we call it the computer of the world because it's the data centers combined of Azure, of AWS, and Google. And within that, we created a Power Platform, and we have also developer tools to bring in the citizen developers and the pro developers together. So, and Business Central is connected to M365. So you get not only the best breed of security, but also the best of the public cloud compiled with the best of collaboration with Microsoft Business Central to help you enable your operation. I'll just finish with this example of Call to Recycle, which is a non-for-profit in the US. They actually work closely with a partner called eFocus, and I choose them because they are small. But the most important thing about them is that they may be small in size, but their impact is huge. So they needed to replace their disparate system with D365 Business Central. They actually also use Dynamics 365 for sales to manage the end-to-end sales process. They added Power Platform to extend not only Dynamics 365 environment and make Business Central their own to tweak it to their own processes. So what was the impact? The impact was an increased integration and automation. Call to Recycle boost their efficiency across their organization, save time on invoicing, banking, sorry, and processes and more. And that made them more flexible, more available to their donor, having more close relationships, and most importantly, growing their donation more and more to have better impact. But with that, I'm going to give it back to my good friend Luke to actually share even more exciting things that we do with our partner Betach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmed, and thanks for all that information. Hopefully that was really helpful to all. For those of us on the call here, maybe I'll just do a little bit of a brief background on our organization. We're approximately a 30-person organization here based primarily in Calgary, but we have staff across Western Canada, and our focus is on the Dynamics 365 Power Platform and Dynamics business applications. So we've been working with folks, everything that Ahmed was suggesting around the end-to-end story from marketing automation, sales, customer service, Business Central, ERP. is fundamental to our business. We want to move on to the next slide. Um, from a customer perspective, a few logos here, just with respect to some of the people we've helped in various capacities, whether that's the Microsoft 365 productivity pieces or some components that we've built around Business Central, like some of the logos you see here, or even some of the marketing automation and sales related aspects of what Microsoft is slowly changing the branding from CRM to the customer engagement set of applications. Some good stories there. So, Quinn, maybe you want to just move along. I think we've got a few other. If you hit on the Microsoft, I guess wanted to call this one out here because um, there is a Microsoft customer story site. Maybe some good reading material here around a lot of these organizations. If you hop on that site and hear more, similar to the call to recycle story that Ahmed had showed on a previous slide, there's more detail with respect to all of these as well here. So feel free to take a look into those and as you're doing your research and putting your thoughts together and see what other people have done from a nonprofit perspective. You want to move on to the next slide here. I know this is very similar, but perhaps maybe just we're looking at the horizontal layout of what Ahmed had slide on the vertical layout here, but like to use this just kind of showing from a bottom-up perspective, I guess, or how we articulate this in terms of envisioning the components here. And it's usually a little bit of a struggle for people to determine, do we need Business Central? Do we need a CRM? What do we need? Are we going to build our processes are unique, so we need to build from scratch, or should we take something commercially out of the box and just work with it from that perspective? So I think, really short and sweet answer here. The most important and salient point to take away: all of these applications run on the Microsoft Dataverse, as you see in the bottom there with the Microsoft Power Platform. And that affords the opportunity for us to substantiate whether that's a out of the box, first party Microsoft application like Business Central, or use Power Apps to build and configure from a templated set of solutions. Or as you see on the top layer there, the Microsoft App Source, there is uh, a multitude of options there from an industry perspective or a use case, a business use case or business functionality point of view, where we can hit the ground more quickly and rather than recreating the wheel and starting from scratch, we build it and incorporate it into the overall environment. So that's really I guess, the philosophy and how we would start to deploy these various apps that you see here. And I know Ahmed mentioned the donor outreach and some of the program management objectives that a lot of nonprofits and charity organizations that we're talking with um, are looking at. And so here's maybe just a visual on from a components perspective on where and how you can start to get started with that. And I think actually maybe we'll put in the notes here and the pieces. There is the nonprofit common data model site. That's an interesting site for everybody. If you maybe are of a little bit more of a technical bent, you might want to get into that site and see what exists there. Same as on GitHub, the nonprofit industry accelerator. There are a lot of open source components here that you can start to pick up and work with. And obviously being cognizant of the fact that nonprofits have resource constraints in terms of human and fiscal resources. So how can you be as efficient as possible there? I would implore you to take a look at those resources and figure out how you can get started. We want to move on to the next slide here. These are just a couple simple examples, and maybe I'll give a personal anecdotal story from outside of a professional context. A part of an organization here where we're essentially we operate a large park facility, and our primary stakeholder is the city of Calgary. But we provide programming and operate a recreational facility. And so we during COVID, obviously, were quite impacted where our operations were essentially shuttered for a year and trying to reopen and rebuild our operations, working with an organization, a community organization here, the Calgary Community, the Federation of Calgary Communities. They basically did an external assessment of us, and the couple questions they were asking were how are you fundraising, how are you engaging, how are you managing your volunteers, those pieces. So a lot of that stuff, albeit slightly outside the context of the Business Central applications, important things and important initiatives. So there's some good components here around the Microsoft Dynamics offers that you can look into to build out some more, I'll say, more sophisticated engagement with your funders. Um, Quinn, you want to move on to the next slide? Just trying to be cognizant of the time here. Same from a volunteer management point of view. Obviously, there's an onboarding experience or a process you need to come up with in terms of managing, in particular, depending on the use case. I'll just suggest one: the vulnerable sector screening. Is that police record check done and on file? And that all can be containerized around that volunteer. Obviously, another simple one is the scheduling and shift capabilities in terms of, we have this event at this time at this location, and we need this many volunteers that fit this many criteria. So that's all possible and part of the Dynamics and Power Apps solution here on the nonprofit industry cloud as well. Same goes, obviously I've touched on the volunteer and fundraising pieces, but really from a marketing perspective in terms of getting the newsletter out. I know just another nonprofit group that I'm part of outside of work. Getting communications out is always the hardest and most challenging thing. So how do we get a streamlined and structured correspondence out to our members and give them the appropriate pieces of information that they're after? So if that's a call to action for the monthly newsletter, or a call out for volunteers, or a donation campaign, we can start to segment all of that appropriately and start to interact with our membership or prospective membership or other stakeholders in a reasonably sophisticated fashion. Another use case, depending on your organization, maybe you would not have thought of this, but utilizing this from a committee a committee meeting structure perspective. So automating the committee meeting invitations, ensuring that the pre-read materials and calendar invites are sent out, and then having the analytics on the back end of this to see who's opened the pre-read materials, and then contributing to the committee meeting, and to close the loop on the last mile, a follow-up survey from a satisfaction perspective. How was the meeting? This is a case where perhaps they have a guest speaker involved, and how did you rate the guest speaker? Was it worthwhile? Those types of use cases. So it's, if you're thinking of it just in the context of a marketing automation um, functionality, you're selling it a little bit short. A couple examples here, and I think we do have maybe somebody from Cost on the call here, but an organization we've been privileged to work with over the last few years here, and specifically with respect to their Business Central, and helping them move into what I would define as kind of that end-to-end solution set, as we're now doing some of the marketing and customer CRM aspects, working with them on their marketing and development side of things, but moving their existing on-premise Dynamics Nav into the cloud, and helping them modernize their business applications from a finance perspective. There's an interesting story there, and as well with the primary care network here, the Calgary Foothills Group, in terms of doing a similar sort of thing with respect to moving the vision from a local infrastructure scenario, locally deployed, to a cloud-based software as a service implementation. And I think that's, by and large, representative of what a lot of the conversations we're having with people, whether those are um, you know Dynamics Nav based, as these two scenarios were, but even I'll kind of revert back to that original example I gave of a nonprofit group where we had staff that were needing to work from home for prolonged periods of time. So from a finance perspective, it was just all that much easier to move to a cloud-based solution where our staff can work remotely if need be, and certainly then from a a governance and oversight perspective with our board of directors having ability, like our finance committee, having ability to log in remotely and view the sets of data that they need to see. Um, it just led to overall operational efficiency, better governance and oversight, and in fact, 3 years on, it's put us in a position a better fiscal position at the end of the day. So some interesting pieces on both of those two customer examples if anybody's interested. Um, One thing that you may want to look into is this is a Power BI dashboard setup here, but just from an analytics point of view, I just mentioned the governance side of it and perhaps board of directors. What we've found is Power BI tends to be an effective mechanism for pushing KPIs, reports, and analytics towards key decision makers who may not have the bandwidth or capability to get into the application and work in a hands-on fashion. So some things here that you may want to think around. This is, just as an example, this program, the overall program impact dashboard. So if we ran a program, how did we actually end up delivering and executing at the end of the day, and a consolidated view. And then essentially the other thing that's really key here is, particularly where some of these programs are maybe externally funded and reporting back to funders are required, or even if that's just your broader stakeholder community and your annual report at the end of the year, there's some pretty quick wins and some good application for these types of Power BI dashboards. I guess, yeah, getting into some of the financial, just a couple screens here, I guess, for anybody that maybe has not seen the Business Central application. Here, you're getting, I guess, kind of all three user experience views here on this slide, whether that's web browser based, tablet, or mobile device. Obviously, there is an Outlook integration to this as well, and really what you're seeing, the mobile rendering here is very similar to the mobile app, or sorry, the Outlook app within your Outlook experience. I know that kind of tends to be a key component where a lot of the end user community spends a good portion of their day, for better or worse, in their email client, and having that baked in and essentially engineered to sit within Outlook tends to be a very big win, and it flattens the learning curve. What we find quite often for new users as they're starting to work with Business Central. From a features and capabilities perspective here, I think just wanted to get this on everybody's screen as it's a little bit more detailed here, but this might be a nice takeaway if you're thinking around any of these areas from a Business Central perspective. Beyond just core financials, this really does handle obviously your chart of accounts, your AR, your AP as part of your general ledger, but these other areas are where we tend to see some of our clients moving towards, whether that's on a project basis or fixed asset management or inventory management. Those tend to be areas where we spend a lot of time helping people just utilize a lot of the components that are there out of the box within Business Central, and configuring it to their business and their business processes. I think one thing we wanted to just leave everybody with today in terms of uh, at least some information is there is a community services recovery fund grant program. And I know we've been talking with a couple of our clients as to how to make use of this program to springboard some of the great stuff we've just talked about in the last half an hour here. But specifically, interestingly, if you see that middle tier, this program is it's investing in systems and processes. And if you read further into the pieces of this, and I can send along more information for those interested, it does specifically call out a couple of things that I thought were interesting. Investing in modernizing accounting systems and customer data systems, or customer relational databases. So it does kind of echo that same sentiment from the Federation of Communities in terms of improving your engagement with your membership and your customer management side of things. So those are two specific items that they are funding as part of this program. So on the surface anyway, I think it would be really helpful for us for any of the organizations we're working with to look at this and see if there's some funds that are available to them, so they can start to springboard their business application landscape and maybe deploy some of the interesting stuff we've talked about. So I think with that, we've covered a lot of ground, and I know that was a lot of dialogue. So thank you all for joining. If there are further questions for Ahmed or any of us, please feel free to reach out. And I think some of us can stick around here a little longer on the chat as well to answer any questions. But with that, I guess that concludes the formal part of the presentation. So thanks everyone for joining us.